Hello and welcome back to TEC Bike Parts Project Interceptor. Another week's gone by and this is part 2, and the eagle-eyed amongst you might spot a few changes from the end of the last video. We've been quite busy with a few things. Firstly, the intro you just listened to. We've been messing about with the sound of the silencers, and we've decided to add a couple of small mutes inside. Now this will be optional, you tell us if you want them or not when you buy them, but I don't know if you'll be able to tell by the video. It just takes the sting off the exhaust a little bit, and it's basically just a couple of mutes welded into the adapter in the bottom, they're just spot welded and you can take them out if you want. But if you want them in, just let us know if you want them to be slightly quieter, and we can add those for you free of charge. Right, going through the bike, as you'll see there's one or two subtle little changes. We've added a set of our CNC levers. We've made up a prototype set of adapters for it and fitted those. They are much nicer than the standard, very cheap and nasty looking ones. And they also add adjustability to reach, which is really handy, and you can adjust it whilst on the move, even with gloves on. Another thing is we've taken the standard mirrors off. I've added just one bar end mirror on now. I've done a fitting video on mirrors, and I've shown how to fit them onto Royal Enfields. Our bar ends and bar mount mirrors will fit all the Royal Enfield models. They're all on our catalogue now, and if you watch the mirror fitting video, it gives you a better idea on how they work. Looking at the bike, you'll also see that I've wrapped the exhaust, just the right hand side pipe for now. Just playing about with different things on the bike to see how they look. Another little thing that you might be interested in while you're looking, you may not have spotted, but I'll do a little transformation while you're watching. Did you see what I did there? Basically, this line is a bit of a disruption. The seam on the bottom of the tank is a bit of an eyesore. A lot of people on Triumphs complained for years about seam tanks, and they're still making them. It's only the Scrambler that doesn't have that on. But you can, a little trick we learned doing custom bikes ages ago, with a black frame, if you paint the seam in on a tank black, it tends to merge in with the frame. So it's just an optical illusion. It also makes the tank look a lot slimmer as well. So if you go back and look at it previous and now, without the black tape on, you'll see what I mean. So probably what we'll do is just paint this in gloss black all the way across, like the front here, and get rid of the little bit of the white stripe there at the bottom. And it just makes the tank look aesthetically smaller. Just little tweaks that can make the difference to the bike really sort of punching and looking nice. Right, we've been getting lots of questions on this bike. It's something that didn't really cross my mind at first about the seat height. Some people are finding the seat height to get quite high. And come to think of it, when I jump off a street twin and onto this, I'm not particularly short, but my feet are just on the ground. So the seat is considerably higher. Now that is going to put a lot of people off, especially shorter riders, and some smaller women have been asking, they like this bike, they've test rode it, but they don't feel secure on it because it's just a little bit too high. But we've got an answer for that. We do an adjustable length shock, or we can do shocks in fixed lengths at different without the piggyback on. Again, a lot of the people have been buying like the silver dust bike and the black bike don't like the idea of the piggyback shocks on it, and they want to go to a traditional unit. Again, we can accommodate that. We do an all chrome unit or a chrome unit with a black spring at various different lengths, so you can say standard, or you can go higher or lower or whatever. What we've done on this bike, because we're going for the black look, we've fitted a pair of our adjustable damping piggyback shocks on here. With these have got adjustable height. I've set the height exactly the same as stock on this. I have fitted some slightly lighter springs on here because I only ever ride one up. I don't think anybody's crazy enough to get on the back of me, and I don't need the extra spring load of being set up for a pillion. So these are one spring rate down from our stock spring. Again, we can accommodate that. When you order the shocks, we can give you standard, heavier, lighter. You know, you ask, we can do it. One of the big jobs I've been doing this week is not actually on the bike at the moment. Well, a few of the jobs aren't actually on the bike I've been doing. I've been developing a rear luggage carrier for it. Now I looked at the ones that Royal Enfield don't have a one in the accessory range, which is a bit odd, I think. And I was looked at some of the various ones in the Indian market that have come in already. Now, what they've done, like you see, I've taken the grab rail off the back here, is basically they utilise the grab rail mounting. Now, engineering terms, that's not particularly good, because this is just a straight tube here. And if you've got somebody resting on the back here, resting on the grab rail, and you've got weight out here, you've got an awful lot of pivot force here just on this piece of tube that's not triangulated at all. So what we've done, we've actually used 6 points of contact. We've used both these mountings, and we've triangulated it to the top shock mount as well. So it gives a degree, not a huge amount, but it does give a degree of triangulation. Now I've done a fitting video for the prototype rack, which we'll put up when it's available, and I'll put some still pictures on at the end of this video of the rack on the back, just to get feedback from people to see what they think. But I think engineering wise, that's an important point, that we've made this area much stronger, because this may be one of the reasons why Royal Enfield haven't produced a rack. They've been scared in case this back part of the frame gets damaged with overloading. But I'll let you make your own mind up on that one. It's not particularly any more expensive. It's just a bit more fiddly to fit when you put it on. You have to actually take one of the shocks off to mount it. But it's not a big job. You only have to take the shock top mount off. Again, we'll show that in the fitting video. I've removed the chain guard, and that's off at our laser cutters at the moment. They're matching up a CNC laser cut aluminium chain guard to fit on here, which we'll be doing in black or silver. Much nicer than the horrible flimsy plastic thing that's on there. Just brings the level of the bike up just that little bit. Also, we've looked at sump guards for the front. Now we did order when we bought the bike, we ordered the genuine Royal Enfield one. But to be honest, when I read the instructions and I looked at the actual guard, I'm not impressed in a couple of areas. One, it doesn't come up far enough to cover the oil pipes and the oil filter at the front, and the way it mounts, it's about a 2-hour job to fit it. You have to take the whole exhaust system off and loosen the frame mounting clamps on both sides, and then mount this bracket in at the front, which may not sound much. It's actually fairly straightforward. You mount it on the engine mountings at the front, but it goes over the oil filter. So every time you change the oil filter, you're going to have to remove this bracket off the front of the engine. So you're going to have to take the whole sump guard off, which, I mean, it's not that particularly hard a job because you just unbolt the 4 bolts. But then you're going to have to take the mounting bracket off as well to change the oil. So I sat down and thought about it and come up with, this is what we are up to now at the moment. We've produced a longer, higher sump guard at the front with some nice decorative ventilation holes in to help keep the airflow going across the oil filter and the oil pipes, because it all helps to cool the engine, and it needs all the help it can in hot climates. And basically this will have an extra couple of points of mounting on it as well to make it more rigid, but it'll be easy to get on and off. You won't have to remove brackets to get the oil filter off and things like that. So that'll just be a screw on, screw off job. We're still in the final stages of making the mountings for it, and that's the first sort of laser cut bend working of it at the moment. The other thing is, in Europe particularly, people like black, and there isn't a black option for this sump guard from Royal Enfield, and we will be producing the black one. Like with all our parts, we tend to produce at least two colour options on everything we make. So keep an eye out for that. That'll be coming soon. Right, in this episode, we're going to be looking at changing the handlebars and clamps to putting a set of alloy taper bars on. As you can see, we've already done a little bit at the front end, but we'll be doing more there. Getting rid of this light unit here at the back. Now, I've had a slight peek in here, and the disappointing thing is there's a welded bracket on the end of the frame rail here. So we're going to have to find a way we can utilise this in. It ain't easy, but you know, we're going to have to go then and address this, because this idea here is not particularly pretty. What I think you might find is the back end of the bike looks cleaner already because we've removed the grab rail. Again, I don't take a passenger on the back, so I don't need it. The grab rail isn't particularly pretty. It's a heavily powder coated, nastily welded piece of tube, and I don't think it looks very pretty at all. But I think the bike looks cleaner without it on, and it's sort of shortened it a bit as well. And then by the time we get a smaller light and small indicators on the back of here, it's going to be sort of an acceptable level. As I said originally, we're looking at making this bike into a street scrambler, and we're going to try and do it without chopping the frame. So we're probably looking at a seat about this length here, which is like a 1.5 length seat, and we may make a cowl, a tapered cowl that goes over the rail here and just incorporates a sort of a motocross mudguard built in with it, and then the rail light at the back. All in the drawing board at the moment, and we're playing around with various things. Right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how you wrap the exhaust pipe. I'll do the other side now and just take you through that. There's various different schools of thought on wrapping exhausts. What you have to be careful on a chromed steel exhaust is you never put the bike away wet. A wrapped exhaust will absorb the moisture, and if you leave the moisture on the exhaust, it'll wreck the chrome and probably end up rusting through the exhaust. Not a problem on stainless steel, but what you need to do is when you come home and put the bike away, just leave it ticking over for 10 minutes and the exhaust will steam off. Same after you've washed it as well. Let all the heat go through the exhaust wrap and let all the moisture steam off. Otherwise, you'll end up with a rusty exhaust with a mild steel exhaust. But that ain't going to be a problem soon because we're going to be making stainless exhausts for them. We've also been looking at the Footpegs hanger mounts. What I want to do is ride the bike a bit more. I'm not particularly happy with the footrest position. I would like it back a little bit, maybe even to the point of the Continental GT position. I think it looks a lot neater than this thrown forward footrest position, but I need to have a bit play. And probably what I'll do is we'll mock up some footrest hanger plates and get it so it's in a position we like, and then we'll be offering alternate foot pegs and brake and gear levers. Funny thing is, I give a mate of mine who's got an old Royal Enfield a ride on this because he was quite keen to get a go on it. He's actually got one on order, but his is going to be a couple of months. And the first thing he did was try to put it into gear with this because it looks so much like a gear lever. And his old Royal Enfield is a right-hand change. So we want to try and make this maybe not look so much like a gear lever. But no, that was just an amusing thing that happened. Right, we'll get on and we'll wrap the exhaust and we'll do a few other things and we'll show you what we're going to do with the backlight. Right, I've put the bike up on the ramp now, and one thing I just noticed that I meant to mention, I think I mentioned in the first part, the left-hand footrest on the Interceptor. Now I thought my bike might have just been a one-off and it's maybe been a bad machine casting or something, but every Interceptor I've looked at in the showroom has the same problem. So it's obviously this casting's wrong. The foot peg on the other side's fine, but this one sticks up. I mean, to be straight, it should be about there. And you can see by the time you get the end of the peg how far out it is. I would say it's about 10 degrees out. And it also causes this gear lever to stick out more than it should as well. It's difficult to show you on the camera, but if you have a look one in the flesh, you'll see what I mean. And we've measured it, and it's this casting is out. This end here is not square with this end here. So it's just a bad casting. It's simple as that. It should have been sorted pre-production, that, and really somebody wants a hand slapping for that one. It should never have left the factory like that. Hopefully they'll address it during production. And like I say, if somebody from Royal Enfields listening, it just needs a little tweak. If you want these bikes to look premium, you know, you're going to have to take notice of some of these little things. I don't want to be too critical because I think the bike's great. And I want to try and help Royal Enfield along here by just giving them my feedback. So we're going to get on and wrap the exhaust anyway. I'll get away from my rant on about parts. I'll pull the camera back a bit and show you what we're going to do. So this is just standard exhaust wrap. It's much easier if you buy it in smaller rolls. You can buy it, I think it's slightly cheaper if you buy it in a bigger roll. The problem is if you put it in bigger rolls, it's much harder to handle. You've got to roll it out and cut it to length. Now this is normally enough to do a standard front pipe on a Triumph and most other bikes. The problem here is we've got a much bigger diameter and we've got a longer length than normal. Normally a front pipe will end about here. So you've got this extra 6 or 8 inches at the end here. And what I found when I wrapped the other one, I didn't want to be mean. I wanted to have a nice overlap, like a 50% overlap on the tape. That way you don't get any gaps shown. I found that I got to about here and I started to run out. So I halved another roll and I used just under another half of a roll on the other side. But it's not a problem to stop with one and join it underneath. And I'll show you how to do that when we do it. But what I normally do is start with a full roll at the top. Now, a couple of little tips here. You're going to need to unroll the whole thing. Make sure your area you're working in is clean because it's going to be rolling around on the floor and on the bike. So just make sure there's no oil or grease or dust lying about. And the ends, if you don't do something in the end, it'll start to fray while you're working with it. So I just normally put a bit of tape round. Okay, so the far end I've wrapped up with a bit of tape to stop it fraying. Now obviously this is the end we're going to get started with, so we don't need to wrap anything around there. Now there's a couple of schools of thought on fitting exhaust wrap. If you're fitting it on really tight, smaller diameter bends, some people like to soak it first so it's a bit more malleable. But the type we use is actually quite flexible anyway. It's just different brands. I don't tend to wet it, especially on a big bore pipe like this with fairly gentle bends. I don't think it's necessary. But if you want to wet it, you wet it. It's up to you. I just find it makes the job a bit messy in it. Like I say, it's not if you're prepared to keep the tape tight all the time, it's quite straightforward. You don't need to do it. The trickiest bit is getting started, because as you put the pipe on, it'll try to slip around the pipe. So what you need to do is have something so you can pull tight against it. In with your wrap, whether you buy it from us or not, you normally get some stainless steel clips. Obviously you need them because they're heat resistant. Now what I did on the other side was I just looped this round the fins, obviously trying to avoid the sensor. I put a little loop in like this, and this is going to be covered by the pipe anyway. And then I pulled the tape up over the top, and it's just something to stop it coming unravelled. Just hooked over a couple of the fins underneath out of sight there, and it gives you a starting point that you can pull against. You see I've got a good pull on it there, and it's not trying to rotate. Without that clip on there, that would just slip around the chrome on the pipe and you wouldn't be able to get it nice and tight. Now I normally go for about a 50% overlap, and that tends to stop it bunching up. Obviously you can't do that around the bends. You're going to have it more bunched up on the inside and have a 50% overlap on the outside edge. Now another little tip while you're doing this and keeping it pulled tight, don't worry about the odd raggy end. You can go and trim with a pair of scissors and trim those off when you're finished. Is as you're doing it, try not to get the edges looped over like that's just happened there. Try and keep it flat all the time, because if you get a lump in it, it'll push it out of alignment, and make sure you don't twist it. The trickiest parts of the bends, and like I say, on this bike, it's not so bad because the bends are nice, big, round, big radius and long radius bends in a big bore pipe, so it's fairly straightforward. But you can see what I'm doing there. I'm not going to bore you with doing the whole pipe. Now what I suggest is, as you're doing it, make sure it's really, really tight. That's important if you're putting it on dry. As you work your way down, just get some normal electrical cable ties. Now these aren't going to stay on obviously because they would just melt, and put them on as you go. And it means you can let go without the whole thing coming unraveled. There's nothing worse than it starting to get slack at the top when you've worked it all the way on. So that bit there is now free and you can let go and it doesn't come unraveled. So it means you, especially when you're pulling it through like this, you don't get tangled up and lose your tension. You can use both hands on the pipe. Okay, that's one full roll on there now. So we've come to the join. I've clipped it up to keep the tension on just before we join the two ends together. And this is half a roll I've got here now. So if you just overlap it, and bend it on top of each other, like so. And you can use a piece of stainless wire, welding rod. I've used a bit off one of the clips I've cut up the other side. And just weave it in and out and push it through. Just like sewing, basically. And just bend your ends around. And just carry on wrapping as you did before. Now, what I advise here, where you've got this join, obviously try and get it so it's around the back. You may have to move it if it comes out on the front here. And then when you've finished wrapping, put one of the wraps, the ties, the stainless steel ties round at this point. Okay, so I'll continue wrapping on there now until we get the end, and we'll put a tie off at the end, and that'll be it basically. So it's just a few more minutes of wrapping this up and then we should be done. Okay, it's all wrapped there now. So you just go along and cut off your plastic cable ties. You use a pair of side cutters at right angles to the tape, so you don't actually cut in the tape. Make sure you just cut the thing, because it'll start to fray if you cut the tape. So just cut through the plastic part of the cable tie, and it'll come apart. So you can see I've put a couple of metal clips on there now. And just make sure they're nice and tight. And just snip off any excess. And if you've got any sort of raggy ends, just go along and trim them off with a pair of scissors. Now it looks a bit hairy at the front here, but if you look at the other pipe, you'll see that that's gone away. These little fibres tend to burn off as they get hot. First couple of times it'll actually smoke when you ride the bike. It's just all the residues burning off. It'll be fine once it's heated through a few times, but don't panic if you see some smoke. This is the first mock-up we've made of a tail light, what we would call a tidy, up on the rear end to try and reduce the size a little bit. It's very much a first try out, very temporary, just to get a look at the lines. We're sort of thinking of maybe making something out of aluminium like this. This was just a light we had in stock, and we're just sort of gauging the idea and the lines of what it's going to look like. I've just made a separate sub harness up for the wiring so we can use it with aftermarket indicators in real light. But what I may do is use it with the actual little aluminium cast part at the back that mounts the light on. Actually, this is pretty handy because it hides all the wiring. It's a bit difficult to get all the wiring inside here and keep it hidden out the way. So we may utilise this with a smaller round backlight, which I think would more suit it, and some reducers in here to mount indicators into. But like I say, it's early days yet, and we're still playing around with ideas. This is just to get an idea. I'll move the camera back a bit there so you can get a better idea what it looks like on the back end of the bike. It does reduce the profile on the back and gives it a whole cleaner look. I'm going to ride it around for a few days like that and see what it looks like. Give me your comments on the YouTube channel what you think of it and any ideas what you would like to do. It's very difficult to do a conventional tail tidy because of the welded on bracket on the back here without having to resort to chopping the rear loop down or something like that. And I know a lot of people won't want to do that on a brand new bike. Yes, if you're a committed custom builder, you know, get the angle grinder out and cut it off, but it is a bit non-reversible that way. You can weld it back on again, but it's never going to be the same again. Oops, my number plate's just dropped off. Okay, so I'm going to get on and do the handlebars now, and we'll continue from there. So here we are at the handlebars. The first thing, obviously, when you're working on bars and things like that, is to protect the tank. So we need to cover this up with some cloths or bubble wrap or something like that. So I'm going to do that now, and I'm going to tape it on as well so it doesn't move. So once you've got the tank safely covered up, I mean, you may want to cover the clocks up as well just in case, but I think I'll be careful enough not to. The first job is remove any mirrors, and then we remove all the controls. Controls, you can normally just loosen them off and let them fall down. Just be careful you don't get any leakage out your brake master cylinder. It should be okay, but just make sure it's not dripping onto any paintwork if it does. Some things you'll have to slide off the end of the bars. Normally on the throttle, this you'll have to slide off or disconnect the cables. And this lever perch, you can't just disconnect the cable and leave it on there and take it off once you've got the bars off and disconnected. But your switch gear, you just need a Phillips screwdriver and these will split and come off. If you're reusing the rubbers, which I'm not, you may need to warm this up with hot water to soften the glue to get it off. There can be a bind to get off without damaging them, but I normally budget on using a new set of grips. I'm going to put a pair of softer, nicer diamond grips on these. These just feel a little bit thin and cheap. Right, I'll get on and disconnect all that and I'll show you what the next stage is. So that's all the handlebars equipment removed and the risers. You can normally just slip everything off the end of the handlebars if you take the grip off first. Now I'm going to fit some of our handlebar clamps. You see I've already fitted one in there. Now these come with 10mm and 12mm mounting clamps, so they're pretty universal. And if you look on the bottom, you'll see that the mounting hole is slightly offset. So what I'm doing on these ones, I'm actually pulling them back a little bit on the offset. But you can also, because the bolts are slightly longer than standard, you can normally just add some aluminium spacers underneath to suit what height you want. Now I'm lifting these about 10mm now because I want to run right height adjusters on the fork tops, and I think that's sort of, by just a quick look there, it looks with the bars I'm going to use, the offset combined with the slight lift in the clamps is going to give me enough clearance to run those, which are a handy little thing because it means you can tweak the ride of the bike. Right, so I'll go on and fit the clamps. The bars I'm using very slightly lower rise, maybe it's about 10mm lower rise than the bars I've took off. So this 10mm rise on here will also help compensate for the rise in the bars. The pullback's about the same, so there'll be no difference there. I was surprised at the weight of the handlebars and the clamps that came off. They're actually quite heavy, and I'll weigh those later. But for now, we'll get on and fit the bars. So I'm going to offer the bars up now to the clamps. Nothing's tight there at the moment. I'm just going to feed the bars onto the cables, and it saves you disconnecting all of this. You can just put it on when the bike's like this, and you can get this clamp obviously doesn't unclamp like the front brake one does, and it means if you put it on at this stage, you can it saves you having to disconnect a lot of the cables. So make sure those are both the offset in the right direction, and we'll just pop one of the clamps on for now just to hold it in place. Right, so I've started fitting the bars back on there. Now if you're going to fit the standard type mount mirrors, you don't need to do anything else here, but if you're fitting bar end mirrors or any other type of mirror that fits in the bar end, or even bar ends sometimes, you may have to drill our bars out slightly because they're a very thick wall strong bar. Even though they're very light, they're actually made out of very thick wall aluminium. And some, well, most aftermarket clamp type mirrors, you will need to ease them out just about 1 millimetre or so with a drill. Now a good idea when you're at this stage is, if you can see here, what I've done on the bar end as it's going in, a lot of aftermarket bar end, manufacturers' bar ends have some form of location devices, but what I've done is just about 2 millimetres down, I've taken about half the material off here. And if you do the same on the end of the handlebar, if you get a hacksaw and just cut in about 2 millimetres from the end and halfway across, so you take a little notch out to correspond with this one, when you tighten the clamp up, you're not relying on just the bolt holding everything together, because what will happen is you go at high speeds, it'll tend to rotate around the bolt. But if you do that little trick there, your bar end mirrors will locate solidly. Just against that 2 millimetres is enough to stop the bar end rotating. Just a handy little trick I thought I'd tell you before you put your grips on. And obviously when you locate everything on here, you're going to need to drill a small hole to position the switch gear, but I'll show you how you do that, because every switch gear is different. These are obviously universal bars, but all we do is put a little bit of masking tape on, put them in position, mark where the switch gear is going to be, and then we'll drill a corresponding hole, but I'll show you that in a moment. So you need to put a 13mm drill at the end. Our bars are 12mm ID, so if you're using a 13mm fitting, you can either file the fitting down, but it's much easier to just pop a and that's as simple as that. The 13mm drill up there, and then that'll fit in there nice and neatly and get a good grip. So we're now at the stage where we can fit the grips. Now I recommend that you use a proper grip glue on your grips, because there's nothing worse than them coming loose. Always glue them on, because it's dangerous if you don't. Now this is a specialist grip glue made by Renfield, but quite a few other manufacturers make it as well. And basically it helps you put the grips on as well as actually sticking them. So especially on this end where it's actually got, it's got a nicely ribbed area on this end, because smooth handlebars and chrome handlebars are notorious for not being able to get a good grip on. If you've got chrome bars, I would recommend just putting a sander on and taking some of the chrome off, so you get a better grip with the glue. So you don't have to go wild with it, just a little smear around the end. Now you might notice here that I've put the notch in that I was talking about here before, and I've also drilled the hole in. A little bit inside the grip. Obviously make sure you get the right grip, because one's slightly bigger on the inside than the other. Just a bit all around. It's basically a rubber solution glue, I think, by the smell of it. Like a contact adhesive. And obviously have a cloth handy in case you've got any spare spilled over. And just work that on to where you want it. Right, now it's important to get your grip in position now. Now as you can see, I've put a corresponding slot on the end of here, so that will locate there so it doesn't turn. As I was saying, with these bars, they don't have a hole in them for the switch gear like most aftermarket bars don't. So basically you've got to put your switch gear on where you want it, and then carefully mark where the peg is, which is there. And then you need to drill a hole. And on these switch gears it's 5mm. So what I'll probably do is put something like a 3mm, put a 3mm half drill through first, and then a fine 5mm to get a good location. And that's fairly straightforward. Make sure you choose a bar that's got enough room to get all your switch gear on here. A lot of competition bars, like motocross bars, are fairly short this length here. So check your straight length before you order your bars. You see, most of the bars we do are competition and they won't accommodate a large switch gear like this. So check your distance from there to there. Or what you can do, like I've done on there, these are competition bars, and I've run a thick bar end inside so that the grip goes over onto the bar end, and so effectively it comes over the end of the bar. But that's something you need to bear in mind when you're choosing bars. Right, so that's the bike back off the workbench now. We've got all the taper bars and clamps fitted. Also managed by putting a 10mm spacer under here and offsetting them back to be able to get the fork top adjusters in. Let's put a look of the prototype adjustable levers. They'll be ready fairly soon. Also put a set of nice deep diamond soft rubber grips, which are really nice and comfortable. I finally decided to go for a bar end mirror. Still not 100% if I'm going to leave that or use handlebar mounted mirrors, but I may just put little blanks in here just to tidy them up. Even just little rubber bungs would be a lot neater than that. So I'm sure you agree that the whole front end looks a lot tidier now. I know we've got rid of a lot of the chrome and bits and bobs. There was a huge weight saving in the handlebars. I haven't actually weighed it yet, but you could feel there was a lot of weight in the standard chrome bars, and this combination of clamps and light bars and light mirror, obviously, compared to the steel mirrors that were on there. That's all accumulated. I would say it's about 1 kilogram we've lost off the handlebars alone. So pulling back there, you can see it's a look much more coordinated look now. And obviously us in Europe now, like we don't like chrome basically. I know from the people who've been contacting me from India, they still seem to like chrome and king and queen seats and things like that. Yeah, I mean, everybody at their own tastes are different. Now here's a detail of the temporary backlight I've put on. This is just one I've knocked up to sort of suss out how we're going to do the back end. This is not a production one yet. I've just made up a little sub harness so we can run aftermarket lights and indicators. But I may actually run the little housing that's on there with a small round light on. Yeah, like I said, we're still playing around with that at the moment. This is just so I can ride the bike and try it out. I'm sure you can see there that the whole back end of the bike sort of drops away now, and it's much tidier. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with the way it's going up to now. We're still waiting for feedback from your viewers to see what you feel you would like us to do with it. Yep, so see you next time. Like I say, in about a week's time we should get another one out. I've done a separate video for mirrors to show you how to mount mirrors, and we'll take it from there. Okay, bye for now.